All righty. Well, welcome everybody to the Open Source Committee meeting, and thanks so much for your patience. I know it's been 3 weeks as opposed to the 2-week cadence, so I'll talk some more on that a little bit later. But on the agenda today, as is pretty much standard, we'll go over any updates from our working groups. So the policy working group, security working group, security and framework. Framework is going to follow security there. We're going to have basically a little bit of a vote or a consensus here to understand if we have approval for those policies, and we'll move on from there. We'll get an update from the incubation working group. We've got a number of different updates from our open source team here at Intersect. As far as new business, we're looking at taking on a new working group, which is the DevX working group, developer experience. Lorenzo from Intersect is going to join us later, and we'll get some updates as far as the GovTool working group is concerned. There'll be a few notes here on the developer advocate program, where we stand, and there may be some additional conversation if there's time as far as infrastructure or additional repos that may or could transfer to Intersect maintainership in the future. Beyond that would be open forum. But what we can do now is go ahead and jump over to Adam, who we have up first for policy.
Oh, hey, howdy guys. Good morning.
Morning.
So yeah, the policy working group, we've been a little bit stalled out, primarily because I've been working with Christian on our community maintainer pilot. And then partially because I've been waiting for Kevin Hammond to get done traveling as one of the members of the policy working group and come to terms with some times that would work for everybody as a member of the group in terms of a regular cadence for that meeting. So we haven't been able to have the policy working group rolling just yet.
All right.
I love how you're trying to compete with me, Adam. So.
If no questions or concerns, we'll move along to Nick for security working group and the security policy.
Yeah, so the update is, well, I guess I spoke last week, we have a draft security policy. I guess the link was shared. Hopefully people had a chance to take a look through that. I mean, just to iterate the main thing, this is principally focused on coming up with having a policy and structures to deal with security issues that arise that might bear a threat to the mainnet, and hence need to be handled sensitively, and we need to can't be done in the open in the same way as a bunch of things. So the policy is here. For anyone who didn't read it, I mean, basically what we propose is we'll have a security council, which will be appointed by, I guess, appointed by the board, or probably more realistically in practice by the technical steering committee. They will be, go through some sort of vetting. I mean, the initial vetting will be defined by, we'll set up an interim council to define the vetting and get that signed off by the TSC. And it will basically be their responsibility to set the sort of security policies, to identify, make sure that we have people in all of the teams who can handle, who are trusted to deal with sensitive information. And they will appoint a security manager, who will basically be a person who sits on the sort of a security mailing list, triages, takes in reports of security issues, pulls in the requisite people to do triage and assessment, basically ensures that everything gets moved. And then we also define, process of, for each project, we want to have a number of insiders who are individuals who are trusted to know about this. I mean, this is in a sense what's already, most likely the initial insiders will be, say, the team leads of the teams that are coming from IOG, because they're already trusted with this kind of information. So yeah, the policy is there. What I would like is to put this forward for a vote by the OSC as a whole to present this to the Intersect board as here is our proposal for approval. I mean, we've already shown it to them unofficially, but as an official recommendation from the OSC to do that. So, does anyone have any questions before I ask people to vote?
I've read it through. It's solid to me, I think, for baseline.
So the general thing after this would be, well, now we've got this initial structure in place. The next step will probably be to hand over to the initial Security Council, and then further updates would probably come from them, because it's not really it's not ultimately an OSC issue in most ways. Do I just answer? I need to ask you to. Oh, sorry. Was there someone?
I was going to say, all in favor, we can just raise our hands. So, cool.
Anyone against? Okay, cool. Then thank you. I guess Tex, do you handle taking that forward to the board, or should I don't actually know who the relevant contacts would be, but
We'll pay you in on it, Nick.
Yeah,
I know how to escalate it in.
okay.
No issues there. I've been waiting for the go ahead.
Awesome. All right, then that's that. I guess the second thing would be proposing to wind down the security group, but maybe we leave that for a second. We leave that until the board has said they're comfortable and propose to council. Yes, Lona.
Why? So are you winding down the working group in regards to creating this document? Because it seems like you still need a working group to actually do the work of the committee.
Oh, the work would be from this point on under the auspices of the Security Council, and that would be appointed by either the board or the TSC, not under the auspices of the Open Source Committee. So that would be the proposal that this working group basically, and it probably, the initial council may well be the same people as were in the working group, but it's technically under a different aegis. So
yeah, and I'll take it forward to get it set up, and then they can take ownership.
Okay, thanks.
All right. So if nothing else for security, we can go ahead and move along to framework. Project framework life cycle. So Bogdan, Salona, or Alex.
Yeah, I don't know. I can start. So this document was released for committee review. I think it was 2 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have any updates, so nothing changed from that moment. So if anyone else has any comments or things that should be addressed, whatever, please let me know.
Does anyone need a brief rundown of the framework, what was included before we vote?
I just shared it if everyone wants to take a quick look.
Basically, all it's doing is putting our projects into categories, and then instituting a process by which we can triage, grow them, and make sure everything goes to green and ensure the success of our projects altogether. And then if they're, for unfortunate circumstances, have a decline, then there's a process so that we can deprecate them and or make them public archives.
Yeah.
So, Anna, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, just to give a little bit more on that. So for example, at Hyperledger, we had when we first came on, we had the projects, and then later we also added in the labs. And one of the things that we had is we had a graduation process for the projects, so that when people came and looked at them, they could know kind of where they were at, right? So you could sit there and go, oh, this one is, it's a baby project. It's here, da 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 da. And so that's one of the reasons we talked about this, is so that we could tell more about where things are at and how we can help them, and how we can hopefully have more make it to fruition, rather than the they build it and they will come mentality that seems to too often exist in the open source inaccurately.
And to build off this will establish that framework, which will tie into the project incubation policy, which will be the next thing to come in line. And I'll put that to the committee at our next session, which ties in also with my support services that I'm closing focus groups on right now. Any questions or concerns? I'll also put this in the Discord channel just to reconfirm votes, since we're a little light on attendance as well.
I guess there seem to be a few sort of unfinished bits in here, which isn't necessarily a problem, but yeah.
So the document stage, let's say at this moment, is like an invitation for you to discuss.
Okay.
So it's not presented like an finalized product ready to go on the public. So there are a few areas that maybe wait for your feedback, contribution, ideas.
This just mostly approves the categories, and then the parts that are missing is kind of where the incubation is going to complement for the most part. I would look at the chart on page 14, kind of summarizes everything.
I think one of the big things on this is the fact that I think Bogdan and I and others, we created a good framework. It's not really, I don't think there's very many things in there that are actually like controversial yet, because we haven't gotten to the details. But it's a framework. And so I think that the framework hopefully works for people, which is why there's not very many comments on it. But I think things will get controversial as we actually get into the nitty gritty as to what is a blah, blah, blah. Then it'll be like, okay, here's, like on abandonment, where we sit there and we go, oh no, here's the actual criteria. Where some people will sit there and say, no, I need more than 2 weeks. I want, 2 months, because people could be on vacation in France in August. And that's when I think like the actual debate starts to happen, to be honest, Christian. I don't think it happens as much when we're like.
Yeah, once you're starting to classify someone's project, that's when they start to care.
Exactly. And this is like a framework where here's where we're going,
Yeah,
and
I'm interested to see the reaction if a core Cardano project gets classified as something less than healthy.
well, there's
And,
going to be some
this-
to do, because there's going to be some qualifications that we're going to insert there that they haven't done yet. So it's going to happen. It's just,
So, I
yeah.
think next steps are, if we approve the framework, then we can get into the acceptance criteria and then run those by the committee one by one and get validation and then institute the process.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on, by the way, in the chaos metrics, Christian. I don't know if you've attended any of their stuff yet or not, but like
Their
there's a lot.
Discord and Slack are always blowing up.
Yeah, because people are always going over those, because it's really, it's really hard to do good metrics. And that's the thing that people don't understand, is that like to do good metrics, you have to have lots of them. And the problem is as soon as you prioritize a metric, it becomes suspect to gaming, right? So it's like, okay, well, it's an ongoing challenge in regards to that.
Would it be appropriate to title this as, or list this as version 1? I know it's version 0.0 right now, but we can change that to, version 1.0 and then give an approval that way, or do we still need to extend the timeline on this?
I would say something, I wouldn't go for 1.0 because of the fact that we've got so many gaps in it. But I do think having a version like 0.1 and saying that it's, this is the alpha framework is a really good expectation management, perhaps.
I wasn't sure where to place the 1, so that works for me.
Okay.
To me 1.0 means, it's gone past beta, and we're definitely not past beta. What we've done is we've created a really, I'm biased, okay, remember this, but I think Bogdan and the group, we created a really good framework. And there's going to be so much being filled in that I really don't feel comfortable calling it a 1.0. I feel like calling it, the framework is like a really good way of doing it. And then as we iterate on it a little bit, then we can move to alpha and beta and then a 1.0.
Any more questions or concerns? Then I'll put it up for a vote.
I mean, I could get really semantic and say that we do semantic versioning.
Okay. All in favor? I guess say aye or raise your hand. I like it. Awesome. We'll follow up with next steps on that. And I already covered the incubation updates with this text.
Okay. And then before we move on too far, as of right now, we have Bogdan rolling off from the open source office. This would be like next meeting would be his last meeting. So just wanted to see if Salone or Alex wanted to take over as lead, but also try to gather a few other people to keep participating on this.
Well, Bogdan has one more, I think.
That's what I'm saying. There's one more iteration, but I don't know if the work sounds like more than just a 2-week cycle.
You mean to keep the document in circulation and gather feedback on it?
Right, and then we'll gather more people to be participating moving forward. Yes.
Yeah, I could do that. No problem.
Okay.
I'll support you, Alex. No worries on that.
Okay. So we've got that as covering framework and incubation. We can go ahead and move on to the open source team here at Intersect. So a couple of things. Of course, last week we were at consensus. I'll let Christian share first on a little bit of that, but that's also going to include the same time as we had the announcement where we have joined the Hyperledger and Linux Foundation as well. So if you missed that, it's on all of our social channels. We can pull that back up again for you if needed. But Christian, tell us more about consensus, please.
Yeah, consensus was cool. That was when our membership portal went live. We were there. I got to meet a bunch of y'all. Also find out the cynicism and also the cheerleaders for Cardano as a whole. So it was really good. Kind of found out where the gaps are, where we can make an impact, and also how Intersect can try and mediate the issues in Cardano and make us all smile and happy at the end of it. I also have now done a closed focus group on support services that our office can do for open source projects and members, kind of as a first baseline of services to offer back to the membership. And that's where I'm doing this survey question, just so I know kind of priority of rolling out those services. But I'm hoping now that we have the framework to put acceptance criteria together, finalize the policy, and then have project support services. That way projects are covered. And I feel more comfortable to call Intersect a foundation because right now it's just kind of projects on GitHub. But yeah, consensus is great. And we, now that we're with Linux and Hyperledger Foundation, we're also going to be at the Open Source Summit in Vienna, September 17th to 19th, I think it is. So if anyone is out there, feel free to stop on by. I'm working closely with Hart on some other stuff. I'm hoping to eventually get a paid open source model, but we'll see how we make those variables work. So yeah, that's my updates.
All right. I've got a few more here. Let's double check on this. We have our Bitergia footprint analysis that has begun. Right now where we're at is that we have a base contributor list that's been pulled, and we will be getting weekly updates on this here. So in future meetings, we should have a little bit more to report back as far as any curiosities that the group, the committee here may have. I did want to share the schedule as far as these meetings are concerned. Get over there real quick. I apologize. That's not working. Okay.
Is he back? Did he get knocked off?
Google throws me out of meetings all the time. It's ridiculous. I don't understand what's going on, but it constantly kicks me out.
Oh, is this the new cadence text proposal, or where are you going?
Sorry, I did not realize I was muted. So, yeah. So here we go. Yeah, this is the essentially, I wouldn't call it a new cadence, but just the dates that we'd be meeting between now and what would be the annual members meeting. Beyond that, I think we should be able to get back to just a regular 2-week cadence, with the exception of national, either U.S. or U.K. holidays here. But if there's ever any issues, feel free to reach out to me directly, or again, the OSO at intersectmbo.org, and we can go from there.
I would like to strenuously object to the use of the most stupid date format, but other than that, it looks fine.
Is that to say the screenshot of the Discord, or?
No, he's talking about having the month before the days.
Date should be
Oh,
ISO 8601 is fine.
okay.
I just realized we forgot to do intros and affiliations at the beginning, so we'll do that at the end, I guess.
Yeah, well, we can do that here in just a moment. Any questions on this while I have this up, other than the date format feedback? Okay. So let me check and make sure there's anything else from open source here. The last time that we met, which is about 3 weeks ago, we had discussed implementing Mattermost, or rather MatterBridge. We've had some talks internally on this, and it seems to be something that is a go to move forward. This would definitely be something that doesn't happen until about the Q3 timeframe here. So think July, August, I would say late July to end of August, somewhere in there. But did want to get just a general consensus or approval from the committee if that's still something we want to move forward with.
I think my vote, yes. I think that lines up too. If anyone's not aware, the Chang hard fork date was also posted sometime in July. So I don't think us doing MatterBridge will interfere with anything like that. So keep tabs on that date as well.
All right. Last thing to mention here, working groups, there's not going to be too much of a change to this, I don't think, but I am working on some things on the back end for Intersect committees, working groups, and special interest groups. So stay tuned. By the end of Q3, there should be a specified document that kind of gives a details as to how a working group should be formed, how many members there should be, and of course that will either at first or as an adaptation to that, will include the fact that anyone participating in a working group, or rather having a seat in the committee, should already be an Intersect member or moving along that way. So we'll get that confirmed on the membership side as well, which is why I say that's a work in progress, but that is a consideration in there. And there should be something by the next meeting that I can post as far as, or there will be a publicly posted document, I should say, by the next meeting about working groups specifically. So that's the last thing that I have here. And I think Solana mentioned we can put names and intros in the chat if we want to go about it that way, or if you want to talk about it here.
First thing, I wanted to let Adam give an update on the pilot program that's going on. I forgot to get that in the agenda. If you'd be so willing.
Yeah. So we are currently in the process of piloting the select a random person from the community and have them become a maintainer of one of our core repositories. So we are currently working through that with the Cardano addresses repository, which is managed not only within Intersect, but also in conjunction with the Cardano Foundation. So it's been extra layers of fun to try to get all these moving pieces working in the right direction. But so we've started our process of collaboration and identifying kind of the governance and decision-making structure of the group, as well as getting some of the policies standardized. So we're hoping to have that, I think, within the next 2 weeks, right, Christian? We should have more updates in terms of some of our, I don't know, what do you call it, contributing standards and design or code style guides and things like that that are migrating over from some of the old IOG engineering documentation. So,
yeah, so we're doing that on Cardano addresses just to prove the theory that someone from the community can get change in through and manage a repo. And it also helps because it's a multi-party thing where you have IOI, community maintainer, and then CF. So 3 parties trying to agree all together. Usually always works super well. And then the other piece to this is it builds to our big open source maturity thing we covered last time, 14 points, just evaluating core Cardano all together. And this helps add more consensus to that. And I'm hoping I can at least get a letter grade of a C. We'll see if I could do that. But yeah, we'll finish the pilot on the 21st, and results will be published by the end of Q2. June 30 is the date. So exciting stuff. So if you want to know where I am, that's what I'm doing.
All right. With that, I will ask any questions, comments, feedback on anything from the open source team. All right. So if nothing else, we're going to move along to the DevX working group, and then that'll be followed by Lorenzo with GovTool working group updates. So Christian, developer experience.
Yeah. So let me pull it up real fast. I had something linked that I was going to share real fast. So I am working on including developer experience and trying to build a link between open source and our current developers all together. So I'm going to be launching a grant sometime early. Whoop, that was the wrong thing. Ignore that. I may actually get the presentation. 1 second. I should have been more prepared, but of course I'm not. So here is the correct link. So I am launching this to try and get some people from the community to help represent developers for the open source office and tie into our open source office hours. And also kind of bring the pain points to be aware for us, so we can also even find strategic projects in the ecosystem that need support, things like that. This deck covers it in its entirety. I'm going to launch that come probably before the end of Q2. And then I'm also proposing we incorporate the DevX working group in under our remit, so it all ties nicely together in a big red bow. And we actually have some key channels to keep in communication with our basically main clients in the ecosystem. So that's my brief update, but I did want to put to a vote if everyone's okay bringing on the DevX working group to us. And it'll be a cadence I manage quite directly. So, any objections?
So who else is in this working group right now?
Alex, you're, I think, the chair of it, if you want to give some details.
Yeah, right. So DevX was created as a collaboration between IOG and MLabs around late 2022. And the membership of the group changes, depends on how you define it. We have an old Discord server, which is called Working Groups. And there is about quite a few people. And then we had like a lot of engagement with the community. And we moved to Intersect. And the last time group was we had regular attendance. We had about 3 to 5 members who were providing inputs, and like the group ended with some documentation. Because for the most part, we were trying to decide like what exactly are we doing with some MLabs folk involved, some IoT folks involved, and nobody really knew what to do. So like I really am happy how Intersect takes the user-first approach and asking the developers what really they need. About some weeks ago, I closed the working group because we didn't have quorum for 2 meetings in a row. Everybody complained that we cannot do anything without resources.
And this ties into the developer advocate program. So it's kind of, instead of them having to create their own working group cadence for that, we can adopt this directly into that initiative. Any objections or silence as acceptance?
All right, and then as a reference here again, what I have coming on working groups and committee back-end work, this is definitely going to influence, and there may be some social comms as well about getting more participation in these. So soon to follow, or rather that work is going to transition into Q3, but I'm trying to get the baseline stuff about working group definitions and stuff set first, and then of course we'll look to drive participation. Tom, did you have a question, or are we good to move on to Lorenzo?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Lorenzo, thanks for hopping in. What you got for us?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me again. We saw each other, I think, like a couple of months ago, something like that. So I just want to report back the progresses that we've been making with the governance tools working group, of which Alex is also participating. So it's great to see him here as well. I'm going to share my screen. I'll share the link to this Miro board. Hey, Alex. There should be no password for this, so everyone should be able to access it. So just to remind context, and again, I'm not just got like 10 minutes more or less, so I'll be brief. So the scope of the governance tools working group is to distribute, decentralize the management and development of the governance tools. We've been already kind of doing this because the governance tools are currently developed by different builders, and actually the Quadrant rollout this year, they are one of the builders that are doing the testing. But we want to expand this even further, so we spend a little bit of time mapping out the current processes that we're following and understanding which steps were missing, and also understanding how to move forward to have even more contribution. So maybe you remember, again, a couple of months ago, probably a little bit less, I shared this at eye level, and you guys gave us some feedback. Then we did, I think, like 6-7 sessions with the working group. So we kind of worked throughout these different steps. We drafted the process, and now we got to this stage. I could go briefly through the actual process here. There's a lot of steps. These 10 minutes might not be enough. But basically, we mapped out what are some key roles that we need. So right now, this is supported by some members of the Intersect team plus the builders. So we need to find a way to give away this process that the Intersect team is managing. So we identified some key roles. These are the black post-its that you see here. We identified some key steps in the process that we are already following, but we documented them more clearly here. We found some questions, some open questions. So these are the red post-its that you see, so stuff that we still need to understand. And the next steps. So what I'll do, I'll just go briefly through it, and then I'll close this bit with what is our next step, and I'll open it for feedback if that works. Okay, so I'll go through briefly. So I'll touch on the key points. So one of the key points is that, which we don't have today, is some key roles, such as a governance tools process manager. So someone that makes sure that this process is still correct, is still up to date, and make sure that discussions are held to keep it up to date if something is not right. We also discussed the importance of someone that needs to connect the dots. Might be one person or multiple people, but we call it for now as the governance tools facilitator. So again, just someone that helps to connect the dots. If multiple builders are working on different things, someone that helps to say, well, actually, you're doing that. It might be helpful to speak with that other person there. We discussed as well that the starting point is always to understand which one are the goals. So we have the goals for this year, which is delivering and supporting the hard fork. So providing tools to support governance for the hard fork, but we need to have responsibility to define the next set of goals, right? So for now, we said that the governance tools working group, so the people within, will be the first group, and then the facilitator, like whoever is helping joining the dots, can also help kind of think about ahead for this next goal. These are some key points there. There are 3 big steps. Again, this is not really like a linear process, as we know. This is mapped linearly here, and then it goes down into like a circular model, but high level. First step is always kind of input coming in. There is something that tells us that something needs to be done. Might be feedback, might be analytics, and this input will always require some sort of triage. That will be different, of course, as it is. And again, this process is based on what we're doing today. If it is an idea, there is going to be one type of triage. If it is a bug, there's going to be another type of triage. The main difference between these two, again, without going into each of the processes, is that the bug triage is probably will be handled at the first high level by the people in the working group. Again, there is a budget allocated to this, but then that will be handled by whoever is building the parts of GovTools. So now we have 4 pillars: the proposal discussion, the voting, the delegation, and the GA outcomes. There will be a builder for each, so they will understand their own bugs better than anyone else. Instead, if it is an idea, there is a standard process which we're following today, but this will improve, of course, where depending on how many people request something and how much research there is behind that, the request kind of grows. Then when it gets to a critical mass, then it's okay, seems that it's the right time to work on that, and then it kind of gets sent to process of discovering. So there will be 2 discovered tickets, and they will be given to the community to be able to work on them. Once the 2 discovered ticket is completed, that will become a 2 design ticket. Okay, we know that there is a need there. We took a bunch of information. Now something needs to be designed. Might be like might be like a part of a tool, so it might be like an interface. It might be like a new architecture. It might be like a solution for something. But someone needs to think about, okay, what do we do with this, right? Again, this will be another type of ticket, and we'll give it to we'll assign that like a data value to it, and people will be able to pick it up. And then to develop in the to develop column, of course, there is like the assumption, because we're doing this today, and so this process is a simplified version that we're going to follow the best practices that we're using today and that are recommended by you guys. So this is just a simplified version, more looking at the bureaucratic element of how do we move things from one step to the other, how do we give money out. So for, again, simplicity of mapping this out and discussing this in the working group, we divided in sizes, so from left to right. Small bug, big bug, new feature, new pillar. So it gets kind of bigger as you get along. So the bigger it gets, the more bureaucracy that needs to be behind, because the more money will be connected to it. And then once it's developed, the item will need to become something that needs to be deployed. And again, someone needs to decide, okay, yeah, this stuff is done. How do we get it out? When do we get it out? Et cetera, et cetera. I'm jumping through things quickly, so I appreciate if there are some gaps, and that's why I also give you the access to this. Important information here as well is on top of this process here, which again should be managed by the key players, will be the working group, the community, of course, as a whole, that kind of participate in the maintenance, the development, and the evolution. But you then have the builders that are maintaining these 4 pillars. And then on the side of this, there is always some maintenance that doesn't necessarily fit into a software product development process, right? So it's management of licenses and tools, management of GitHub, and again, this kind of needs to follow the best practices that you guys are documenting, managing of the repos, best standards from Figma to GitHub to everything that is like maintaining good processes throughout. So all of this is kept on the side because it doesn't fit necessarily into a linear process, but it's always ongoing. And again, these black post-its are some entities, bodies that we believe will either participate or be responsible for it. And again, to remind, at the moment, some of this is already happening, but because now it's a mixed process between the Intersect team and these builders, it's kind of more reduced. It will get like expanded. And then the last part is the procurement or contract management. So again, this is not necessarily part of a linear process, but every now and then there is a big feature, there is small bugs. Someone needs to say, needs to take responsibility to distribute those money. Now I think like within that the working group and the expert working groups below, like a product working group or a technical working group, they will be able to define a budget connected to certain tasks. But then for the actual signing of the contract, because of where the money is coming from the development trust, which actually it's has a slightly longer name. We believe that the Intersect procurement team can still provide support. Contract signing, there's a question mark there. We need to understand how that works. And payment, again, once the contract is signed, like it's happening today for the grants or even with the current builders, again, the quadrant is one of those, so we have a good example there. Once milestones gets completed, they get signed off, and then the Intersect procurement team pays them in ADA for the value. I don't know how I'm doing with time, so I'll just gonna mention what is our next step here, and then I'll open for questions and feedback. So this process is more or less what we're doing today. More or less what we would like to do is not necessarily like complete and comprehensive, but it will grow and we will adjust it as we go. So for us, the next step is to test the inclusion of smaller contributors to this process. So the one good example that we have identified is that the management of a bug. So actually just yesterday, we released the new version of GovTool with new features. There are, of course, some bugs there and some improvements. So what we want to do as a next step is to select one or more small bugs and then test the process to allow an individual, a member of the community, to work on that bug, go through the process, fix it, and then getting paid, so that we see what are the complexity there that we haven't seen so far. And I'll pause. I said a lot of things. Open to questions and feedback. Or silence. Silence works as well.
I guess, or maybe one thing that strikes me. So this talks about sort of implementing new features and things.
Mm-hmm.
If they happen in parallel, there's going to be a maintenance effort and a kind of a merging effort and a case of, basically gatekeeping things to the repo. I don't see how that's handled under here. Is it?
Yeah, so if I got your question, as I said, this diagram is more like a process diagram. It doesn't then go deep into the how we are in development action. I think Brian was in the call here. So we implemented we're going to release it in the next release, a new architecture that basically divides the product in pillars. So every pillar is just displayed to the users as one experience, but is effectively divided. So every builder will be able to update their own pillar. So for example, the delegation is by itself. It doesn't bother any other part. And then the every time that there is an update, a package related to that pillar will get like updated. So that's the process that we are aiming for so far. Of course, as soon as we get more contributors in, we'll find the gaps in this process and we'll get it better. I don't know if that's what you were asking.
Okay, so the assumption is basically that you think by design you won't get conflicts and things, and therefore you won't need people to manage it.
Well, a little bit of both. You still probably need people to manage it because the whatever happens on one side is still like that dot connector role that helps kind of understand, or maybe if you're changing something there, someone else needs to think about something out there. So there still needs to be some coordination. But then once the scope has been reviewed, so once you go through the discovery and design, then the development itself, it shouldn't create problems to each other because each pillar should live by itself. So yes, in theory, by design, we're aiming not to create dependencies, let's say.
Okay.
Now, this is what we're aiming for. It will probably work like this, but maybe like in the first few iterations, there will still need to be some facilitation that needs to be made, obviously.
Anything else for Lorenzo or GovTool?
Okay.
Is GovTool already open sourced? Is that?
Yeah.
Yep.
You can go to you can both see the repo and everything that is happening. Actually, I think like last week we were one of the, yeah, thank you, Ryan. And you can actually see also the development, also our project management board in GitHub is open. So you can track the work that the Byron team, the Quadrant team, the Deliver team are doing. Yeah.
And I believe they had the most commits on Cardano project updates week after week at the moment.
Yeah. Yes. And of course, like you keep the. I don't know if you have like where you're taking the notes for these meetings. Anytime that something comes to mind, this board is always open. So if you want to leave a comment or something something has changed or you have an idea, this is always open. And we're gonna start to meet again with the working group. I think from next week, and then we can go forward with the next steps. So yeah, any feedback, I'm sure also Alex, being part of the working group, will pass them over. Cool. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Well, thanks so much there, Lorenzo. Christian, did you have anything else on Developer Advocate, or was that covered in the DevX portion?
I was covered in the DevX.
All right. Nick,
That's
that passes along to you there. I think you had Hydra. Haskell's that next.
Yeah, this is just a general topic of, I don't know, do we, whether Intersect as a whole yet has a strategy to handle the bits of, development infrastructure that are currently still owned and operated by IOG. So in particular, things that came to mind, I think there are a few things that may, slot in here, but obvious things that come to mind are Hydra, which is basically the build system, and Haskell.nix, which is an IOG built thing for packaging Haskell stuff under Nix. As far as I'm aware, they are still owned and maintained by IOG, but they are critical components for the development of core Cardano. Maybe it's fine that they stay owned by IOG, or maybe it's not. And
well, quick update on that, because we're also being asked to form working groups for Marlow, Hydra, and Mithril. So the ownership.
Hold on. I want to be clear. This is a completely different Hydra.
Yeah, this is the other Hydra. This is the
Hydra head or the tail.
This is nothing to do with Hydra head.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Those things are relevant as well, but this is a totally different Hydra. This is the Hydra build system.
I see. No, it's the Hydra that's preventing a lot of pull requests from going through multiple different times. So, I can stake those conversations in the TSC and figure out what ownership's coming down to them. The Nix website, I'm not sure about that one, but Hydra build system, I think, should be an interesting thing.
It's not a website. It's a build and development infrastructure. Alex, sorry, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to kind of emphasize your first point because I'm using NixOS and pretty kind of familiar with Nix community. People know me there, and every time I try to show them Haskell.nix, they are kind of, it's very complex, and they say it's IOG turf. We don't know. It's fairly incredibly complex piece of software. Let's say this.
Complex. It is absolutely required for things like for things like Plutus. It's used to get patched GHC, etc. So it is a critical dependency that currently sits still within IOG's sphere of control.
Let me start those conversations then, because I think it makes sense to come over since we now have core Cardano as well. And if it's core to building on that, it just makes sense logically to me. But it's definitely going to be a TSC decision. And I think they meet next week, or it's the week after. I'll try and get some internal decision on their thread then. Adam?
Yeah, I was just going to comment that Hydra builds failing is a large part of why I can't merge anything on Cardano addresses currently.
Yeah. Well, let this be part of the pilot program to get resolved now, and then I'll do my part on the back end.
All righty. So if nothing else, I'll give it back to Christian here in just 1 second, but two quick updates that I have that I'm not sure if I put some focus on earlier. What I just completed actually this morning is for all of our active committees, those are now synced to their own individual documentation repo. So building towards truly open source or truly public references for everything that's on our Git book. And yes, special thanks to Ryan for helping me out there as far as the template. And then also we are going to be publishing our first public version of the Bitergia monthly report. And that should be out sometime by the end of the day. I'm shooting for noon, but that's where we're at. Christian, anything else before we close out?
No, just keep tabs on that report. It'll give you insights as to where we were from, is it April to May, something like that? I forgot.
It's the May report, but it does have derivatives from both the, it's just gonna be the May report. So expect a more comprehensive one come July, which will be the Q2 report. Adam?
Oh, no, I'm good. My hand didn't go down automatically.
Oh, okay. No trouble. Nick, did you have something?
I don't think I have anything else. No.
Anything else in open forum before we close it down for this week? All righty. Well, definitely thanks so much, everyone, for attending here today. Going to keep up a regular cadence depending on what the workflow looks like. I'll definitely have the meeting minutes up by Wednesday of next week. If I can get them up Monday or Tuesday, I'm going to do my absolute best. But I will try to make sure they are as detailed as possible, since I know we did cover a lot and we did have some special guests here. So if nothing else, again, you can always reach out to us on either Slack, Discord, or OSO at intersectmbo.org. And thank you again.
Thank you. Have a nice weekend.
Yeah.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers. Bye.